What's up, everyone? Overheat here, giving you guys not a World of Tanks review, but a rant on the difference between a good tank and a great tank. Yes, there's like three types of cans. You got your shitty tanks, your good tanks, and your great tank, but mostly this video is going to be revolving around tier 9s and 10s and what makes certain tier 9s good and other ones great. That's pretty much all this is a random beat. It's pretty much based off my 121 and video, and that's pretty much it. So why I think that tank is awesome, but it's not it's pretty much just a good tank and not a great tank, unlike D50M. But anyways, let's get right to it. Now, there's a lot of tanks in the game that are good. There's also only a few tanks in the game that are great. And to help you guys better understand the difference between a good tank and a great tank, I have a list of all my tier 9s and 10s right here who I currently own. And my most favorite one when it comes to the difference between what's good and great is the E5 and the 215B. Now they're both tier 10s and they're both tier 10 heavies. And they're both tanks in some sense play the same role as a mobile DPM heavy tank. Now I'm not going to go in great detail with these tanks because I'm just going to do reviews on them later. I'm going to just kind of do a simple rundown, just do a quick rundown of their guns really quick, which is the most major feature of the tank. Now the E5, oops, you know, is rate of fire is 6 rounds, aim time is 2, and the accuracy is 0.34. I don't care about, we're not doing the damage, but we're just going off those stats right now. Though, that's fast. Like, this thing shoots fast. You know, 6 rounds per minute, that's incredibly fast. That's one of the fastest out of all the heavy tanks in the game. You know, hence, you know, a heavily armored DPM heavy tank. But then you have its, I guess, its challenger, competition, there you go, is this tank. This tank is technically built around the same idea. Now when you take its gun, you got 6.90 round, which is ungodly fast for a medium heavy tank. That's medium tank status right there. 1.70 aim time, again, that's medium tank fucking aim time. That's ridiculously good. And 0.33 accuracy, which is medium tank accuracy. Hence, a lot of people like to call this tank the super medium tank, because that is what it is. And technically, they both are. Now, both these tanks are very similar in that sense. They both fill that role. I mean, you got your heavily armored heavy tanks, you got your burst damage heavy tanks, and you got these, you know, mobile DPM heavy tanks, and then you got the mobile heavily armored derp heavy tanks. So these two are the most retrospect when it comes to mobile DPM heavy tanks. And in a sense, their stats are the same. And what I mean by that is that the concept of both tanks is the same. Both tanks have great armor, but it's inconsistent armor. They have obvious weak spots. American tanks always have their obvious big-ass commander hatches, and then you got the British with their weird turrets and their vulnerabilities. But, I mean, where the armor is good, it's good. And where the armor is not good, it's not good. I mean, they're both tanks with very inconsistent armor and obvious spots. I think when it comes to left and right, you know, I think the E5 might have a slight edge on armor, and the E5 is slightly more mobile, too. Not much, but it is slightly more mobile. But why? No, I shouldn't start with why, but I feel the E5 is a good tank. It is a really good tank. But the 215B is a great tank. Absolutely a great tank. And if you had these two in a game, and both players that were playing both these tanks were equally skilled, the person in the 215B should bring out better results than the E5 every game. Well, why is that? Because the 215B fills the role better than the E5. The E5 is the shadow of the 215B. Now, because they're both DPM heavy tanks, that's their role. But the 215B DPM's harder. A shit ton harder. Almost an entire second round harder than the E5. So in hindsight, this tank right here, like every time I have a great game with this tank, I'm literally used all my ammo with this tank. And again, that's another small feature, but the results are great, and I've had great games with the E5. Like I love this thing. I think it's a good tank, but I don't get the results I get with the 215B. And it's the same thing when I did the E50M review, my 121 review. Like, I love both tanks. Both tanks are great, but I shouldn't say both tanks, but one's good and one's great because they're both tanks that fill the same role. They're heavily armored, medium damage, mobile, heavy. Like, they're like heavy medium tanks is what they are. Technically the same as these are heavy DPM tanks. They're low on the DM damage side, but they got armor. And E50M, the 121's good. It brings out great results, but doesn't bring out the results I get at the E50M though, with this playing the same role as the heavily armored medium tank. The E50M brings out better, more consistent results. And that's what defines a good tank between a great tank, because at the moment in this game, every tank in the game, it ain't like when it first came out there was like only 3 factions, and you know, the Russians and the Germans and the fucking the British. I mean, there wasn't much competition at that time, you know. Tanks had a right of their own, but now everything kind of feels or has a competitor with it. And there's certain reason why certain tanks like the Patton and the E50M have the stats they have. Why does the E50M have the highest health in the game? To make it more desirable to tank, even though it doesn't really need it. The tank itself is actually a great tank, but it explains why no other medium tank in the game has 2,000 health, because honestly, the Patton is a piece of shit tank, and Wargaming knows it. That's why every medium tank in the game, besides the E50M, is below 2,000. All of them. That's why every medium tank in the game doesn't get 420 view range, is because the Patton needs that edge to stay to be desired. And if a tank needs to try that hard to be desired, and Wargaming needs to try that hard to make a tank be desired, the tank sucks. Like, the Patton sucks. I'm sorry for all you people who are like, I love the Patton. I mean, it's not a bad tank, but it's not a great tank, and every medium tank in the game is better than the Patton. So, and if you want to scout, the Russian tanks are better at scouting than the Patton, because they're not big and bulky and have shitty camo value. I mean, probably the 262A is probably the best scout tank in the game, maybe, and 140 is good too, slightly better camo rating. But I mean, the competition that Patton has to go against now, I mean, that's why certain tanks have the stats they have, is because the competition's so great, is that if they reduce the stats to balance them out, no one would play the tank anymore. So a Patton and E50M are a good example why. I mean, that's also the reason why E50M has that 2 extra millimeters of penetration, because back then it was to give it that, you know, edge, even though it really doesn't need it anymore. I mean, honestly, if they nerf the health on the E50M, it doesn't really change anything. The only thing its health does is pretty much make it be able to take one more shot. But honestly, I think the 121 should get a buff on the health. I mean, if it's going to sit there and play the same role as the E50M, it should at least have equal or close to the same health as the E50M if it's going to play that heavily armored mobile medium tank. But I mean, that's a great comparison between what's a good tank and a great tank. And the Patton's a good tank, but almost any other tank, medium tank in the game is a great tank compared to the Grattan. The 202 is another. I mean, they're going to replace it. Anyone who's played PC knows they're going to replace it. Blah blah blah. But I'm just saying, the 202 is another great example of a tank that's good, but because of its flaws, and its flaws are so great, it can only be a good tank. You'll have good games with it. That's all you'll have. Occasionally, you'll have a great team, but that's it. It's not like the E50M where game after game you can have great games. E100 and the E75. I'm going to do a comparison on those two now. They're both the same tree in the same faction. But honestly, my personal opinion, the E100 is a shit tank. I mean, the competition for the E100 is shit. The thing has 4 things it has to compete against, and it's all in its entire own fucking tree. I mean, look at, like, if you look at the E100, this is the pinnacle of the Tiger II line, is right here, and it's supposed to be this heavily armored, high health, heavy tank that has very derpy. But why, if you want a heavily armored, high health tank, why not just get the mouse? I mean, the thing has 3,000 fucking health and armor that can fucking bounce off anything. I mean, if armor and health is what you desire, I mean, there's no reason to have the E100. And once they get the Japanese heavies in here, I mean, the E100 is going to go extinct because there's no reason you should want that tank. The only thing it has going for it has a really derpy 150, and that's it. And that's a very inconsistent gun. And the E75 and the VK4502 are better and more heavily armored than the E100. And look at the stats. On the hull, 20, 120, 150, 250, 150, 150, and the E75. The turret has more turret armor than the fucking E100. The side armor of the turret is better than the E100. Of course, the hull is different on the front, but still, the hull on the E75 is more angled than the E100. E100 is fucking rounded. Like, the hull armor is slight, but the turret armor, which is super important when it comes to side scraping, the turret armor is insanely good, and it makes it a better side scraper than the E100. So, and then you have this VK45, which for whatever goddamn reason its lower plate is super fucking impenetrable. But, I mean, the competition, is this what I'm saying? There's good tank. The E100 is not a bad tank. It is a good tank. But the competition for its role as a heavily armored tank, there's just better choice. The tier 9 is better choice than the E75, E100. When it's more mobile, has a more reliable gun. It has better turret armor, which is super huge when it comes to side scraping, just as important as hull armor. And I mean, the only thing it has is this 2,700 health. But if you want a heavy tank with high health and fucking super, why would you get the 100? Just get the fucking Maus. I mean, that's the stuff I'm saying right there. I mean, the competition now is real, and there's a reason why you see a lot of one tanks and you do see a lot of E100s. You do, but it's not because the E100 is a great tank. It's because it's one of the early trees and everyone got one at the beginning. So just like the American E5 and the British stuff. So, you know, everyone got one at the beginning. But the competition is real for the game. I mean, you got the Russians, which again, like, in a sense, this is like supposed to be the more heavily armored, more mobile game. But again, this IS-4 would probably fall more on the line on the more DPM side of the more heavily armored, more DPM based heavy tanks. But I like the IS-4. IS-4 is good, but it's consistent. It has a more consistent gun, but less consistent armor, I should say. It's a different review. I mean, the only thing you can really compare the IS-4 to is the IS-7. So I mean, that's a different thing. I mean, that's an entire both. Honestly, I think all the tier 10s on the Russians, probably the only faction where all the tier 10s are fucking solid down the board. I think all the tier 10s are great. The 268 and the 263, solid. All their medium tanks absolutely solid. Their artillery is awesome. Their heavy tank, everything in the Russians got tier 10 wise is solid, man. Go Russians for that. But again, when it all comes down to, I mean, the competition is out there now. I mean, a lot of tanks are tanks that were popular one time. I mean, there's just better choices out there. When it comes down to is the results the tank bring. And honestly, when I played my E100, like, it didn't feel as good as when I was playing my E75. E75, every time I play, I get great games in my E75 all the time. Win or loss, I get great games. And you know, you could say, you know, it's all the player makes the tank shit, and that's also true. I mean, that is true. I mean, a shitty player, you know, playing the E100, man, they're probably just gonna sit there and stand still while you shoot at their lower plate. A good player will sit there and move and angle it. I mean, you know, your weak spots, and you try to avoid that, blah blah blah. I know that. I honestly think of myself as a great player. I mean, I'm up there with them. I do good with my tanks. My stats proves it for myself. And I know my stats are. I look at them and I know I'm a great player, and I bring out great results in games. And on more than one occasion, I've carried games. But to us great players, we have tanks that we like, and if we want to win and play serious, we have our go-to tanks. And the reason why we have our go-to tanks, but those are the tanks that bring out the best results for us. For us great players out there, man. Like, if I was to pick a heavy tank, my E75 would probably be my go-to tank. It's a tier 9, but I bring out great results with my E75. I wreck shit with my E75. I don't wreck shit with my E100. I wreck shit with my E75. Like, that's my go-to tank when it comes to being a heavy tank, and I wreck, man. I play this shit like a beast, and I come out of the game, win or loss, and man, top 5. Easy, you know? And that's what this entire video is about, is consistency with results, and why you see the tanks you see when you're playing. Because some tanks are good, and other tanks are great, and the great tanks bring out better consistent results, or bring just more wins than losses, more satisfying losses than, you know, there's a lot of factors, but more than anything, the tanks themselves, just the great tanks bring out great results and consistent results. The good tanks bring out good results, man. It's not as good as, you know, E5 I can get good games in, but then the 215B I can get fucking great games in. So, I mean, that's just pretty much what it comes down to, consistency. And I mean, that's pretty much it, man. It's just consistency, man. There's just tanks out there just more consistent than the other ones, and that's just how it is. Like, it's competition for you. So, but I mean, that's just a little rant between difference between a good tank and a great tank. So I don't think I really helped anyone for me saying that, but I'm just throwing this out there. Just, you know, there's good tanks out there and they're great tanks. And of course, it kind of changes a bit when you're in the lower tiers, but this video kind of revolves around the tier 9 and 10. And for all those who are out there questioning, like, why do I not see many AMX 50B players, or why am I the only one playing the 121? It's because, you know, the competition's real, and, you know, there's better choices out there, and that's pretty much it. I mean, that's what it kind of boils. Not that the tanks are bad, just there's better choices out there, and they bring better results. So that's pretty much it for today. I'm done.